Hey everybody, can everyone hear me okay? Just want to make sure my audio is good. All right, looks like everybody can. So, yep, we're good to go. All right, so today we are going to be working on some general word problems. So the thing you'll notice in target test prep, of course, is that general word problems is a very lengthy chapter. There's a lot that we cover in general word problems, which is good. So a lot of it is basic translations, and then there's other stuff like, mixtures and, percentages, or not percentages, interest rates, growth. So there's a lot there. Obviously, we're not going to cover all that today. One of the main focuses I want to work on today, of course, is just getting used to doing the translations. Now, one thing I'll say is the idea of doing these translations is very important because even though, at times you can back solve, you don't have that opportunity when, say, you're doing data sufficiency, for example. So back solving and things like that isn't something I would want you to rely on. And remember, this idea of translations comes up all over the test. It's not just in general word problems. You need to be able to translate, ratios into equations. You need to be able to do it with percentages. You need to be able to do it even in some combination questions. So rates and work, of course. So this idea goes far and beyond just general word problems. That's where you generally learn it, but then you have to use it in a lot of different places. So I want to start kind of a basic age problem, which is a good representation of dealing with translations. For some of you, this might be a piece of cake. For some of you, it might be a little bit more difficult. So take your best stab at it, put your answer in the chat box, and then we'll go from there. right, so how was that for everybody? Pretty straightforward? See, everybody got, yeah, pretty much the same answer. So, yeah, I imagine this wasn't too bad for you guys. So, remember, A would be Abba's age today, so we'll just say Abba today. M is Mabel today. Equation 1, A is equal to, so Abba is obviously the older one, right? So she's 4 times as old as Mabel, so A is equal to 4M. Statement 2, 10 years ago, okay, so that means A minus 10. She was 9 times as old as Mabel. Mabel minus 10. A minus 10 is equal to 9M minus 90. Bring the 90 over. A plus 80 is equal to 9M. Bring in the 4M for A, right? So 4M plus 80 is equal to 9M. 80 is equal to 5M. Divide both sides by M and you get M is equal to 16. Answer B. Keep in mind, they could have said how old is Mabel in 5 years or something like that. Then you would add 5 years to her age. So just keep that in mind. Now, I want to get into some harder stuff. So let's talk about fraction word problems, one of my favorite things to cover with general word problems. So let me just get the next question up. And then we can go from there. So there's a bunch of good ones I want to do with fraction word problems. You know, fraction word problems, a lot of times, there's certain times where subbing in is a good move. There's certain times where just using a variable is a good move. So why don't you take a look at this here? Give it a couple minutes and we'll chat about it. right, so I see some answers trickling in here. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Did you just use like a variable T for the total amount of like coffee in the cup, or did you do something else? Used a variable. Yeah, I think using a variable here makes sense as well. Now, there's like a fast way to deal with this question, and then there is a, what I say is a quicker way to deal with this question. Yeah, the LCM works. I mean, here's what I'm doing here. So again, it's all about remaining, remains. So he drinks 1/4, 3/4 remains, 1/3 remains, 2/5 remains, right? Because we care about the remaining the entire time, and that's what you care about at the end. So now all you have to do is reduce down. 2 goes in this 1 time, 2 goes into this 2 times, 1 and 1. So you have 1/10 T is your final answer. So A 1/10 is what we're dealing with here. So for a question like this, there's definitely many ways to deal with it. So, you know, just do what you feel comfortable with. There's also other types of fraction questions, which I want to show you, which I've actually showed you at different times in some of these webinars. But I want to show you a fraction question, which I'm just pulling up now, that deals with, you can decide, hey, either I'm going to plug or I'm not going to plug. It really depends on, you know, what you think is the best move for you in solving it. Like, you can use variables or you can plug in real numbers. I tend to be someone, in the case of the next question I'm going to give you, as someone who likes to plug in real numbers. You'll see the simplicity of it once I show you the solution. I'm not saying you have to do it this way, but you'll see it can be a pretty cool method. So why don't you guys try this one here? I'll give you guys a couple minutes. right. So as I mentioned, this question isn't impossible, and a lot of you guys, pretty much everybody got it right. So I'm more concerned with the process because these questions can get harder. Did you guys plug in a real number for the cup sizes? That would be my first question. Okay, well, this is good. I'm actually glad you guys didn't do that. What you can do here, the larger cup is 3 times the capacity of the smaller cup. So because we know that large is 3 times small, we can use a strategic variable knowing that one is 1/4 full, knowing that one is 1/2. So a nice clean way to deal with this is to say, you know, maybe we say the large is 12 and the small is 4, for example, right? And that checks out given this here. Now, we're saying that the small cup is 1/4 full. Which is equal to 1. And the small cup is 1/2 full. So that's 12 times 1/2, which is 6. 6 plus 1 is going to give you 7. And then 12 being the amount because it's going into the large cup. So this is just something to think about as a good way to deal with this question. And I personally think it's a very simple way to deal with it. So yeah, try to do that yourself when you're dealing with questions like this. All right, guys, I want to do one more question with you. And then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. Unfortunately, my daughter's sick at the moment, and I can hear her still coughing downstairs. So I need to probably tend to her shortly. So let's do one more question, and then, like I said, we'll do some Q&A, and then we can hop off for the day. So give me 1 second. All right, take a look at this question here. Put the answer in the chat box. All right, so looks like a lot of good answers here. Now, a question like this, something I want to teach you guys, it's one of my favorite things to teach in this question, is how not to make big numbers that you then have to divide down to smaller numbers. And you'll see what I mean in a second. Can't plug in numbers here because this is an algebra question. So T would be the total people. We care about the girls, 3/5 are boys, so 2/5 have to be girls. Then of these girls, 2/3 played sports. So we care about the sport playing girls. Of these girls, 1/5 play indoor sports. That's going to leave us with 4/5. Okay, so 2/5, 2/3, 4/5, because 1/5 play indoor, that means 4/5 play outdoor. And clearly we care about the outdoor. So that equals 240. So we have 2 times 2 times 4. That's going to give us 16. I'm fine with doing that. I'm also fine with doing 5 times 5 times 3, which is 75. Now, the one thing I don't want you to do is multiply 240 by 75. You can bring it over to say 240 times 75. You can say 8 goes into 16 twice. 8 goes into 240 3 times. 2 goes into 2 twice, goes into 30 15 times. T is equal to 15 by 75. Now, you could do 15 by 75 out, or you could recognize we care about the boys in the 6th grade, not the total. So we'd be multiplying that by 3/5, right? 5 goes into 15. I mean, we could do it either way, but 5 goes into 15 3 times. So we have T is equal to 75, or really, that's actually the boys. It's not even T anymore because it's the number of boys, because we basically are multiplying both sides by 3/5. So we'll rewrite it as the boys equals 75 by 9. And then it's pretty easy. Like, we know 75 by 10 is 750, so 75 by 9 has to be slightly less than that. So 675 is a logical answer. So what I'm saying is you don't have to go crazy sometimes with all this math. This is just a nice, clean, simple way to deal with this question. All right, well, we can do some Q&A. If you guys have any questions, target test prep questions, anything like that, anything about your studying, anything about your GMAT, you can put it in the chat box and we can talk about that now. So let me know if you have any questions here. Any questions at all? The recording last week didn't actually work. That's why you never saw one from last week. It usually takes about a week or so. We put it on the YouTube channel, our YouTube channel. The coffee question. You're using the remaining fraction because every time coffee is drank, you care about what's left. If 2/3 has been drank, 1/3 is left, or 1/3 is remaining. If 3/5 is drank, 2/5 is remaining. If 1/4 has been drank, 3/5 is remaining. Everything in this question is about remaining. That's why we're multiplying by that. If you want to mess around with this question, just plug in real numbers. You know, use like 120 or something and whittle it down, and you'll see that that's why we solve it that way. This is also a question in our word problems chapter. If finishing TBP, how close should my first mock be? Well, your first mock is your first mock. I mean, you might get nervous, and if you're nervous, then maybe it's not as close as you'd like to your score goal. But as you take more and more mocks, you should get closer and closer to your score goal for sure. No, I'm not going to be sending out these questions. These questions are from Target Test Prep, so you can practice thousands of Target Test Prep questions by signing up for Target Test Prep. And we have a 5-day trial, so you can check it out if you want to see whether or not you'd like to purchase it. Well, mastering word problems is like anything else. You got to learn the concepts, and then you got to do your practice, and then you got to see where there's gaps and fill them in. It's all a very simple process. It's just there's a lot of information on the GMAT. And to me, that's what makes it so tough. Any other questions? All right, looks like you guys are good. I think we're doing a webinar next week, but I'm not positive. If not, we'll be doing it the week after. How long should you give up? I mean, if you're on the test, it depends where you're at in timing, but you know, about 3 minutes. If you're behind the clock, you can't spend more than that. And you got to really think about where you're at in the question. If you really have no clue, maybe you give up on it within 30 seconds, you know? It really depends. All right, cool. Good work, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for participating. Have a good weekend. If you need us at TTP, clearly we're around. You know how to reach me, and I'll talk to everybody next week or the week after. Talk soon, everybody.